Keeping It Real. How are you doing today, Carrie?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing good. So Carrie's with Fairway. I'm with Real, and we're going to go ahead and talk about real estate, all things real estate, always. So today we're talking about local offers, and I'm kind of excited about it because it's a market that, you might be sitting on the market for like 45 days or something, right? It's
Yes,
not like a couple of years ago where it's like you're getting a whole bunch of offers and they're all at once. It's like you might be sitting out there for a while, and so depending on what's going on with the situation, you might have somebody who comes in and says, "Hey, I want to do a little bit lower than what you're asking." And sometimes that works, and sometimes that doesn't. And we're going to talk about what a low offer is today. So here we go. Okay, so probably the first thing is it's kind of it's an offer that you get or that the seller will get, and it's usually something that's really, really low. I mean, like we're talking maybe 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 under asking price. And we're going to talk about, is that a good idea? Why or why not? Right?
exactly. Yes, because it has its
Okay.
pros and cons.
It does. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. And it really depends on where everyone's at in the situation. Okay, so let's get started. So this is what a lowball offer is. And like we said, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's a good deal and sometimes it's not. And we're going to go ahead and move forward. So why would a buyer do this? Because maybe the property is overpriced and that's why it's been sitting there and it hasn't gotten the offers. Maybe that the buyer thinks somebody's like the seller's really desperate. Maybe they're, underneath the time frame or something and they wanted to sell it faster and they're not selling it. So if they offer lower, maybe they'll take it because they're trying to sell quickly. They've got to move to another place. Sometimes it's the market conditions, like we're saying right now. Like sometimes it's, there's a whole bunch of houses out and nothing's really selling. Buyers aren't ready to buy right now. So that could be a reason. If you start really low, maybe the seller come back and, I'll meet you here instead. And you're still going to get a good deal. It's less than what you were thinking or, less than what you were thinking about getting it for, but you didn't want to do full price, but you wanted, kind of somewhere in the middle and you went a little bit lower and kind of met up in the middle where you're comfortable with getting it. And a lot of times investors will do this too. This is kind of an investor strategy. Like, hey, if I can go to get a good deal, because I'm going to go and fix it up and turn around and get a higher investment for it. I'm going to do some work on the property, a fixer upper kind of home. That could be another reason that you get low bar offered, right?
Yes.
Doing pretty good. I gotta remember to breathe. Okay, but let's talk about the risk. Carrie, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, you risk offending the seller.
Absolutely.
They put a lot of time and effort into making sure their house was ready to go on the market. They staged it. They put out the marketing and advertising for it. And then all of a sudden you come in and you're $30,000 lower. It could be a huge insult to the person selling the house.
Absolutely. And, there's different pricing strategies. I mean, like sometimes you're going to price it high because maybe you're not you're really not in a rush. So that might be your assumption as to the buyer, like, oh, this person's in a rush to sell. They might not be. They might just like, I'm just throwing it out there. And if I get this price, cool. If I don't, I'm not really not worried about it. So, that's kind of what a pricing strategy is. Anyway, so definitely, you could definitely offend. And you could also lose the property too, because somebody else, and it always happens. It's like that house might sit in the market for so long, and then all of a sudden you get 2 offers in that same day. And it's like, where was I ready for the last, month and a half? So they, you might end up, the other person comes in and puts maybe a little bit less, but maybe closer to that number, and yours is too much lower. The other person obviously is going to win out because they offered more money. So anyway, those are some of the reasons.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, not only are they offended, but also it's like, why would I want to work with that person? You know what I mean? So like if that person was serious and maybe the buyer's game plan was, like I said, like I'm just going to give them my lowest number and see if I can get it for that. And if not, I'll negotiate up. Right. And I can go up a little bit. And if I've got somebody to work here and I just want to see how low I could actually get it for. The seller's going to look at it too. Like, do I really want to work with you or you're trying to take advantage of me? So it kind of wrecks your reputation, I guess is the way to put it, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it also wastes their time. It's a huge waste of time when they have other serious offers of people that are wanting to get into a house and recognize the value of it.
Also, and it also wastes the realtor's time too. You got to say
Yes.
that too, because, I mean, like, it takes time to write up those offers. And, if you're not serious, you're just, I'll just go in and, I don't care if I get it. I mean, it's kind of rude to your person you're working with too.
Yes.
I'm so honest. I have this honesty feel. Just use it.
But it is true. And people don't realize the amount of work that gets put into even writing an offer. There's so many fields that you have to remember to fill out, and it's very time consuming.
It is. And to make sure it's done correctly, and we're always trying to make sure the buyer's taken care of. I mean, that's our goal in life, is to make sure that buyer is getting the best deal and doing that. And when you're putting stuff like out there, it's not a good thing. Okay. So let's talk about the sellers. So we kind of already said, you might get they might be offended. So that's like one of the first things that they're going to respond to, is how they're going to be offended. But, I mean, I have conversations with my sellers, and it's like, like I was talking about the pricing strategy, we can price it really high, and, then I would expect some low offers, because people were out there with their buyer brokers, running comps. Does the price make sense? Is this okay? Is this, I mean, they're running those same numbers and usually using the same comps. So unless there's something really, really wrong with that, I mean, that's going to be a pretty obvious that it's an overpriced home, and there's some room to possibly negotiate something there. If they're pricing according to market conditions, though, and you do that, obviously that's going to be offensive.
Yeah.
Right.
How many times do you have a seller that comes in and wants to place their home on the market for a much higher price than you think present market conditions, meet? That's a huge one too, because I've heard that before, and that's been a frustration. This seller thinks that their house is worth, $850,000, but according to the market, it's only worth $775,000.
Exactly.
So it's almost an expectation to receive those lowball offers.
Right. So, like I said, there's different reasons that the seller is going to put it out there for whatever price. So what they need to do really is just, if you get one like that, I would always counter it back, because chances are, I mean, unless you're really set on that price, I would just go back and say, that's the price that's the only price I'm going to take. So if you want to offer me this price, great. Let's not waste anybody's time. And, let's not do this back and forth. Just that's what it is. So just being very objective, knowing what your goals are, what your limits are as far as when you sell it. Sometimes they're just trying to see, like I said, hey, is buyers going to be coming in for this price? They're just kind of gauging what they can get. So that's what I would say as far as that. Did I miss anything on there? Just pretty much just talk to your real estate person. Make sure you have a good game plan. Know your numbers. Know what your budget is. Make sure that's very solid and very clear, and then you know what you can do. But if they're close, negotiate. If they're way far off, it's still worth negotiating, just to see if you can get to that number that you need. But I would always counter back unless it's absolutely insane. Okay. All right. Let's continue on. But there's times where they do work, right? I mean, like I said, sometimes it's been sitting there for a long time, and the seller really does have to move, and you might get it for a lower price, and that's kind of really cool too. If there's if they have to sell because they have to pay a new mortgage on a new house that they've already been under contract with or something, or there's that timeline that they have to do like contingency something, definitely you might be able to get it for lower than what they're asking. It doesn't hurt, especially, if it's been sitting there longer. It's definitely worth, to find out kind of like where the market is. I mean, have your broker run their numbers, and what's the numbers that they're trying to hit, and does this number make sense? Could you ask for a little bit lower, or could you ask for concessions, or there's other things you can do too. So I'm not saying don't do it. I would definitely do it, but just make sure that you talk to your broker and make sure it makes sense, and that you're also knowing going in that you're going to be negotiating on some of this stuff. So, okay. So final takeaway, Carrie, it looks like you're on mute. I don't know if you had something to add. I know you have dogs in the background, and that's totally okay. I think it's great because we get to
decided they were going to have the Zoomies. So I'm like, oh boy, mute that.
And that is all okay. I might run around looking at me. So, The main thing is if you're going to do a low ball offer, just really take the emotions out of it. It's a strategy, and know that going in, knowing that you're going to negotiate, knowing what your numbers are, knowing what you're willing to pay, what that number is, how far you're willing to go up. If you're looking from a buyer's perspective, if you're looking from a seller's, if you overprice it, knowing that going in, you probably get some lower offers. What is that number that you are willing to take, and let the brokers negotiate to make sure they're aware of that information. So in some cases, it is, I think it's a kind of a risky move depending on how much of a low ball offer, but definitely, I think it's a market right now that you can definitely, come in with a little bit lower and just be prepared to do some negotiations.
I think the best takeaway is that you should always listen to your professional. They really know what the market is looking like and what offers are going to be good and acceptable. So they're not trying to make more money off of you. They're just trying to be considerate of their time and your time. So that would be my number one takeaway is whatever you do, just listen to your professional.
Yep. And I mean, I run comps for my buyers and my sellers. So, and like I said, I think most brokers do that. I would hope anyway, but it's really knowing does that number make sense that they're asking? Is there room to negotiate? Does the house need to be fixed? That could be negotiation. So there's all kinds of things that can be negotiated. So don't be afraid of them, use them, but be realistic in your expectations. That's all I have for today. Carrie, you have anything to add to that?
No, sounds good.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you same time next week. Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Damn.